The abandoned child. The night was cold, and the streets of the alien town were quiet. Shadows stretched across the broken stone road, and only the weak light of old lamps kept the darkness away. In that silence, a small figure sat curled against a wall, shivering. She was an alien girl, no more than 10 years old. Her thin arms wrapped around her knees, her glowing eyes wet with tears. Her stepmother had thrown her out only hours before. The words still burned in her ears. "You are useless. You are cursed. Get out of my house." The heavy metal door had slammed, and the little girl had been left outside with nothing but the thin clothes on her back. Her stomach ached from hunger, and the wind bit against her. "Bare feet," she whispered into the night, her voice trembling. "I promise. I won't misbehave. Please. Someone, be my dad." But the only answer was the whistle of the cold air through the streets. The stars above seemed distant, uncaring, and her small body trembled harder as the hours passed. Her species was not weak by nature, but she had been treated as nothing, starved of food, starved of love. From the shadows, a pair of boots stepped closer. A man-human was walking down the road, carrying a small pack on his back. He had been traveling through this alien town, and he was ready to leave before dawn. But his steps slowed when he saw her. The tiny girl crouched against the wall, looking more like a lost shadow than a child. The human stopped, his eyes narrowing. He had seen many strange things in his journeys, but never a child thrown away like this. The girl noticed him and quickly tried to hide her face. But her whisper escaped again, broken, desperate. "Be my dad." "I won't misbehave, I promise." The human froze, his chest tight with something he could not name. He wanted to turn away, to keep walking, to pretend he had heard nothing. This was not his world, not his problem. But her voice clung to him like chains, fragile yet heavy. It was the kind of voice that stayed in the heart. Refusing to leave, he stepped closer, and the girl lifted her head, her eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, looked straight into his. There was no anger in them, no rebellion, only pure fear and hope mixed together. It was the look of someone who had nothing left, someone who only wanted to be wanted. "What are you doing out here, little one?" he asked softly, his voice calm. The girl swallowed, her throat dry, her lips pale. "My stepmother," she said. "I am cursed." She said, "I bring shame." The girl whispered. She said, "No one wants me." Her voice broke as she added, "But I can be good. I can work. I can do anything. Please, just don't leave me here." The human's heart tightened. He had seen cruelty before, but never in such a small form. A child begging for a father, not for food, not for toys, but just for a place to belong. He knelt slowly, his tall figure lowering, until his eyes were level with hers. Her skin carried bruises, her arms were thin, her breath shaky from cold. She looked more fragile than glass, and yet her eyes refused to close. She kept them fixed on him, as if he was her only chance at life. The silence stretched between them, heavy, almost painful. In the distance, door slammed and drunken laughter filled the air. The human knew this was not a safe place. If the wrong people found her, she would be hurt or worse, sold. And he knew he could not stay here much longer either. "Come with me," he said. At last, his voice firm, though uncertain. The girl blinked, almost afraid to believe his words. "Really?" she whispered, as if the very sound of hope might break it. He reached out his hand, rough from travel, steady as stone. For a moment, she only stared at it, her small body shaking. Her stepmother's voice still rang in her head, screaming she was worthless, screaming no one would take her. But here, a stranger was offering his hand, not mockery, but a chance, with trembling fingers. She placed her hand in his, small and cold, against his warmth. The human pulled her gently to her feet. She stumbled, weak from hunger, but he steadied her Without a word, he took off his own cloak and wrapped it around her shoulders. The girl gasped at the sudden warmth, clutching it tightly as if it was the most precious thing in the world. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice low. "I don't know what your future will be, but for tonight, you are not alone." The girl pressed her face into the cloak, her eyes filling again with tears. Her small voice whispered one last time, "Thank you, Dad." The word echoed softly in the cold night, and the human felt it strike deep in his chest. He had not planned to take anyone with him. He had not planned to become a father on this strange world. Yet something told him that this small child would change his journey forever. And as they walked away into the shadows, the night no longer felt so empty. The human's dilemma. The human man walked slowly through the quiet streets. The alien girl, holding his cloak tight around her shoulders. Her small footsteps hurried to keep up with his longer strides, and though she was weak, she did not let go of his hand. Every time she stumbled, he pulled her steady. Every time she slowed, he slowed too, but inside his mind, questions battled against each other like storm clouds. What was he doing? Why had he reached for her hand? He was a traveler, a man who moved from place to place, never staying too long, never making roots. He had no house here, no family, no plan to care for a child. And yet, when he looked at her teeny, fragile, clutching him as if he was her only hope, he could not walk away. The girl whispered softly, almost afraid of breaking the silence, "Will you send me back tomorrow?" The words struck him like a knife. He looked down at her face, pale and thin, her eyes red from crying. She expected rejection. As if it was the only thing the world ever gave her, he sighed, unsure what to say. "No, not tonight," he answered, his voice heavy. "You'll stay safe with me for now." Her grip on his hand tightened, and for a moment, she smiled. A tiny flicker of light in the darkness. But the man's heart grew heavier, because he knew tomorrow would come, and with it, choices he was not ready to make. They reached the edge of town, where he had a small camp set up near the ruins of an old wall. A fire crackled low, and his bedroll was laid out against a stone. He had only prepared for one, not two. He helped her sit near the fire, and when the warmth touched her, she closed her eyes as if it was heaven. The man gave her a piece of bread from his pack. She ate carefully, as if afraid it would vanish. If she bit too hard, he noticed how thin her arms were, how her ribs showed even under the cloak. No child should look like this, he thought bitterly. When she finished eating, she whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Almost too soft to hear. The words struck him again. Deeper than before, he was not her father, not even close. But to her, that word meant safety, meant love, meant hope, and she had no one else to give it to. As she curled by the fire, her eyes half closed, the man stared into the flames. His thoughts would not rest. He had lived his life free, moving from one world to another, never tied to anyone, never carrying another's weight. But now, with one choice, he was no longer free. He had taken her hand, and she trusted him. If he left her now, she would break, and he knew it. The night passed slowly, with the fire whispering and the cold winds scratching at the stones. The girl slept, clutching his cloak like a lifeline. But the man stayed awake, listening to the distant sounds of the town. He thought about the people there, about how quickly they had abandoned her. He thought about the stepmother's cruelty, the lies she might spread, the danger that might follow. By dawn, his decision still haunted him. The girl woke first, her glowing eyes looking at him nervously. "Are you sending me away now?" she asked, her voice weak. He rubbed his face, tired from a night without rest. "No," he said slowly. "Not yet." Her lips curved into a small smile, and she leaned closer to the fire, warming her hands. But inside, the man felt trapped between two paths. If he kept her, his life would change forever. If he left her, she might die. Alone and forgotten. Later, as the sun rose higher, the man packed his things. The girl followed him, carefully carrying a small bundle he gave her. She wanted to help, even if it was just a simple task. Every step she took, she glanced up at him, as if afraid he might disappear. Every time she saw he was still there, she smiled faintly. Relieved, they walked through the hills outside the town, the road stretching far. The man tried to think of a plan, but his heart was restless. The girl spoke again, breaking the silence. I can cook, I can clean, I can stay quiet. I won't be trouble. Her words cut deeper than any blade. She was not begging for food, or clothes, or toys. She was begging to exist in his world without being cast out. She was begging for permission to live. The man stopped walking, staring at the path ahead. He could not promise her a life of safety. He could not promise her love like a real father would. But he knew one thing: he could not abandon her. Not after hearing her voice. Not after seeing her eyes. Still, doubt ate at him like fire. Was he strong enough to protect her? Was he willing to fight whoever tried to take her away? As if reading his silence, the girl stepped closer and held his hand again. Her voice was soft, but steady. Please, don't give me back to her. The human looked down at her, and in that moment, his dilemma grew heavier. For he realized the truth: he could never see her as a stranger again. She had already become something more. The road stretched on, and the future remained uncertain. But with the girl by his side, he knew his journey would never be the same. Shadows of the past the road stretched through the empty hills, and the morning sun painted the sky in pale gold. The human man walked with steady steps, but his mind was far from calm beside him. The alien girl clutched his cloak tightly, her small hand gripping his as if letting go meant death. Every time he looked down at her, he wondered what story hid behind those frightened eyes. At last, when they paused to rest near a stream, the girl sat quietly on a rock, staring at the water. She said nothing at first, but her trembling fingers twisted the edge of the cloak. The human gave her space, not wanting to push. Yet he could see a storm inside her. Finally, she whispered, "Do you want to know why my stepmother hates me?" The man turned his head, his eyes narrowing. "Only if you want to tell me," he answered, his voice calm. The girl's glowing eyes reflected the rippling stream, and slowly her words began to pour out. "My real mother. She was kind." The girl whispered, "She used to sing to me every night. She used to say I was her little star." Her lips trembled, and her voice broke. "But she died when I was still small." The human felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. The girl's voice was soft, but it carried years of pain. "After she was gone," she continued, "my father brought another woman. She looked at me with cold eyes from the first day." The girl's small fists tightened. She said I was weak. She said I was bad luck. She said I was the reason my mother died. Her shoulders shook as she went on. If I spilled water, she called me cursed. If I tripped, she called me shame. If I cried, she told me monsters would come to eat me. The human clenched his jaw, his hand tightening on the edge of his pack. He had seen cruelty in battles, but cruelty against a child struck deeper. The girl pulled down the edge of her sleeve, showing small scars across her thin arm. She said these were to remind me that I was nothing. She whispered, but I still hoped. I still thought maybe one day she would like me. Her voice cracked as tears slid down her cheeks. Instead, she opened the door and threw me out. She told me to never come back, that no one would want me. The human's chest burned with anger, his hand closing into a fist. He wanted to find that stepmother, to shout at her, to make her see the evil she had done. But he held back, because right now the girl did not need rage. She needed someone to listen. He knelt in front of her, placing his hand gently on her small shoulder. Her body flinched first, as if she expected pain. but then she relaxed under his steady touch. "You are not cursed," he said firmly, his voice deep. "You are not shame. You are not nothing." The girl blinked at him, confused, as if she had never heard those words before. "You are a child," he continued, "and you deserve to be cared for, to be safe, to be loved." The girl's lips parted, her tears falling faster. "But my stepmother said even the stars don't want me." The human shook his head. "Then she lied," he said. "Because I see you, and I don't see bad luck. I see someone who survived even when the world was cruel." The girl let out a sound. Half sob, half laugh, as if her heart could not hold so much at once. She buried her face in the cloak again, her small shoulders shaking. The human stayed close, letting her cry, letting her release years of silence. For the first time, she was not alone with her shadows. When her tears slowed, she whispered into the cloth, "Do you really mean that?" The human nodded, his voice low but firm. "I mean every word." Her eyes lifted, wide and glowing, searching his face for lies, but finding none. And for a moment, a fragile hope flickered in her expression. The day stretched on, and they walked further down the path, but the air between them felt different now. The girl no longer walked behind him. She walked beside him, still holding his hand, but with her head lifted a little higher. The human knew her pain would not vanish in one day. But he also knew something had changed. She had trusted him with her past, and in return, he had given her something her stepmother never had: belief that she mattered. As the sun dipped low, they reached a small abandoned barn on the edge of the fields. The human decided to stop for the night, and they built a small fire inside. While the flames danced, the girl sat quietly, her eyes following the sparks. At last, she whispered, "Do you want me to call you Dad again?" The question made him pause, the firelight flickering across his face. He had not planned for this. He had not wanted a child. But the word had already rooted itself in his heart since the first night, and though he was not her real father, he knew what answer he had to give. "Yes," he said softly, "if that's what you want." The girl's face lit up with a fragile, trembling smile, and she whispered, "Dad." As if the word itself gave her strength, the human felt the weight of his choice settle on him. Heavy but right. He knew her past was full of shadows, but from now on, he would stand between her and the darkness. The barn grew quiet, the fire warm, and for the first time in years, the girl fell asleep without fear, and the human, though still filled with questions, felt something new in his chest. Not chains, not burden, but a bond, one that no cruelty could ever erase. Danger strikes the night inside the old barn was calm. The world was not. The human sat awake while the alien girl slept curled in the cloak, her breathing soft and steady. He kept watch, his hand resting near his worn blade, his eyes sharp in the firelight. Something inside him knew that peace could not last. Back in the town, the girl's stepmother had already noticed her absence. At first, she believed the girl would crawl back by morning, desperate and hungry. But when the hours passed and no small figure appeared at her door, anger began to burn. She could not allow the child to find safety, not after she had called her cursed. Her pride demanded the girl remain abandoned, worthless, forgotten, and so she began to whisper lies into the ears of the villagers. "She is dangerous," the stepmother hissed, her voice full of poison. "She will bring sickness to us all if she lives." The villagers, already fearful of anything strange, listened. With uneasy hearts, it did not take much to stir their fear into hatred. Soon, men with torches and clubs gathered, muttering about the human traveler who had taken the girl in. By the next evening, they were ready to act. Back at the barn, the girl stirred in her sleep, her small hand reaching for the human's arm. Her voice trembled even in dreams, whispering, "Don't leave me, Dad." The human's jaw tightened as he looked down at her. "I'm here," he whispered back, though she could not hear. And he meant it. No matter what came, a sudden sound broke the stillness, a distant shout. Carried on the wind, the human stood quickly, every muscle tense, his instincts warning him of trouble. The girl woke at the noise, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" she asked softly, clutching the cloak tighter. The man placed a hand on her shoulder. Steadying her, "Stay behind me," he said, his voice firm through the cracks of the barn wall. Flickers of firelight appeared, torches moving closer. The sound of many feet crunching against the dirt. The human's eyes narrowed. His heart steady but fierce. "They're coming for you," he said. Low but certain, the girl gasped, her whole body shaking. "They'll take me back to her," she whispered. Terror in her voice. He crouched down, his eyes locking with hers. "Listen to me," he said. "They will not take you, not while I'm here." The barn door rattled as heavy fists pounded against it. "Open up, traveler." A harsh voice shouted, "Hand over the cursed child before she brings ruin on us all." The girl pressed herself into the man's side, trembling like a leaf in the storm. The human stood tall, his shadow stretching against the firelight, his voice steady as stone. "She is no curse," he called back. "She is a child and she stays with me." The villagers growled in anger, their fear twisting into fury. "Then you choose the monster over your own kind." One spat. "You'll regret it." With a crash, the barn door splintered and broke open. Torches spilling light inside, the human pulled the girl behind him. One hand reaching for his blade, his eyes swept the crowdmen armed with sticks and iron, their faces twisted by fear. But he did not step back, not even once. The girl's voice rose, small but desperate. "Dad, please. Don't fight, they'll hurt you." The man glanced at her, his face calm, though his eyes burned. "They'll have to go through me first," he said. He lifted his blade, not with the rage of a killer, but with the resolve of a protector. The first villager rushed forward, swinging a club. The human moved swiftly, blocking the strike and pushing the man back into the others. "Stay back," he barked, his voice echoing, but the mob pressed forward, their fear stronger than their reason. The girl covered her ears, tears streaming down her cheeks as the clash of wood and steel filled the air. The human fought not to kill, but to protect. Every strike he gave was controlled, pushing them back, forcing them away. Yet still, they came, their torches casting wild shadows on the barn walls. At last, his voice thundered, louder than the chaos, "She is mine now." The words froze the mob, his declaration cutting through their anger. "I am her father," he said, his chest rising with every breath, "and I will protect her with my life." Silence fell for a moment. The villagers staring, uncertain. They had expected a stranger to hand the girl over, to give in to their fear, but instead they faced a man who stood unshaken. A man whose words carried fire. The girl peeked from behind him, her glowing eyes wide. For the first time, she saw someone. Speak for her, fight for her, claim her as family. The stepmother, watching from the back of the crowd, hissed with rage. Her plan had not broken the girl, had given her a shield. The villagers slowly began to back away, muttering, their fear no match for the human's iron will. But the stepmother's eyes burned with hatred. She would not stop. She would not allow this man to steal the child she had cast out, and in her heart, she began to plan something far worse. Inside the barn, the girl clung to the human's side, her body still trembling. Her whisper reached him, soft but full of awe. You called me yours." The man looked down at her, his hand resting gently on her small head. "Because you are," he said simply. The girl's tears fell. But this time, they were not only of fear, they carried hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found the home she had begged for. The bond grows stronger. The barn was quiet again after the mob left, but the air was heavy. The fire still burned low, flickering against the broken door. The human man stood with his blade at his side. His breath steady, but his eyes sharp. Beside him, the alien girl clung to his arm. Her body trembling, but her heart filled with something new safety. For the first time in her life, someone had stood for her. Someone had said she was his. She kept replaying his words in her mind. I am her father. They were simple words. But to her, they felt like the strongest shield in the universe. She whispered them to herself as she sat near the fire. He called me his. He called me his. The human placed his blade down and crouched beside her. You did well, he said gently. You were brave. The girl shook her head quickly. No. I was so scared I almost screamed. I wanted to run. He gave a small smile. Bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about standing, even when you are. Her glowing eyes widened, her lips trembling before a shy smile appeared. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever told her she was more than her fear. The warmth of the fire filled the barn, but the warmth in her chest was stronger. The next morning, they left the barn, walking down the road together. The sun painted the hills in gold, and the girl walked at his side, still holding his cloak. She no longer dragged her feet, no longer stared at the ground. Instead, she looked up at the sky, her steps lighter, her voice braver. Dad, she whispered, testing the word again. Can I help you today? The man looked down at her and nodded. Of course. Here, carry this. He handed her a small bag of dried food. Light enough for her small arms, she clutched it tightly, her face proud. See? I can work. I'm useful. The man's heart softened, though he said nothing. He knew she was trying to prove her worth, afraid he would change his mind. But to him, her worth was not in carrying food or cooking it, was in being a child. Still, he let her help because it gave her strength as they traveled. She began to learn his ways. She watched how he built a fire, how he searched for clean water, how he checked the road for danger. At night, she would copy his movements with her small hands, practicing until her fingers were sore. And when he corrected her gently, she listened with wide eyes, eager to learn, eager to please. One evening, she tried to cook using the small pan he carried. The food burned quickly, the smell filling the air. Her face fell, and she whispered, I ruined it. I can't do anything right. The man tasted it anyway, nodding slowly. Not bad. Just needs less fire. Her glowing eyes lit up, a laugh slipping from her lips. The sound soft and pure. It was the first time she had laughed in years, and the sound startled even herself. Day by day, her fear began to fade, replaced by something brighter. She started to hum softly at night, little tunes she remembered from her real mother. She followed the man closely, asking questions about humans, about his journeys, about the stars he had seen. He answered each one with patience, sometimes with humor, sometimes with silence when memories grew heavy. But always, he listened too. Her voice, never once telling her to stay quiet. One night, as they rested under the open sky, the girl lay on the cloak beside him, staring at the stars. Her voice was small but steady. When I was with her, my stepmother, I wished every night that someone would take me away. She turned her glowing eyes toward him. And now you did. The man looked at her, his chest heavy but warm. I didn't take you, he said softly. You chose to stay. Her lips curved into a smile. Then, I'll never let go. The bond between them grew stronger with each step. The girl began to call him Dad, not only in whispers, but with open voice. The word no longer felt like a dream, but like truth, and each time she said it, the man felt something change inside him. He had never wanted a child. But now he could not imagine the road without her. But outside their small circle of warmth, shadows continued to grow. The villagers still whispered. The stepmother still plotted, and though the girl laughed more now, though she smiled and worked, and learned, danger had not vanished. The human knew it was only a matter of time before the world tested their bond. He watched her sleep that night, her face peaceful against the cloak, and he swore silently to himself, whatever comes, I will not let anyone take her away. The road was long, the future uncertain. But the bond between the human and the alien girl was no longer fragile. It was strong, forged by pain, by trust, by love. And though storms would rise again, he knew they would face them together. The ultimate test of bond between the human and the alien girl had grown strong. But strength is always tested. The road carried them farther from the town. Yet whispers followed like poison carried on the wind. The villagers spoke of the cursed child, and the stepmother's voice poured fire into their fear. Soon her lies reached ears stronger than those of simple men. They reached soldiers. The stepmother stood before them. Her eyes cold, her words sharp as blades. She is dangerous, she said. The child carries ruin wherever she goes, and now a foolish human shields her. The soldiers, loyal to order, listened, and soon they rode out, their armor glinting. Under the sun, they did not come to speak. They came to take, far from the town. The human and the girl rested by a quiet stream. The girl laughed softly as she tried to catch little fish with her hands. Splashing the water, the man watched her, his heart lighter than it had been in years. For a moment, it almost felt like peace could last. Then the sound of hooves broke the calm. The man stood at once, his hand reaching for his blade. The girl froze, water dripping from her fingers, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Soldiers appeared at the crest of the hill, their banners snapping in the wind, their weapons ready. Traveler. One called out, his voice hard, step aside, hand over the cursed child, and no harm will come to you. The girl ran to the man, clutching his cloak, her voice trembling. They'll take me back. Please, Dad, don't let them. The man placed a steady hand on her head, pulling her close. His voice rang clear across the field. She is no curse. She is my daughter. The soldiers exchanged looks, some frowning, others sneering. One rode forward, his spear gleaming. She is marked by darkness, and you would claim her as kin. Yes, the human said, without hesitation. I claim her, I protect her, and I will not give her to you. His words fell heavy like iron. The soldiers dismounted, spreading out, their boots pounding against the earth. The girl trembled, hiding her face in his cloak. The man crouched slightly, meeting her terrified eyes. Listen to me, he whispered. No matter what happens, stay behind me. She nodded, though tears ran down her cheeks. The first soldier charged, his sword flashing in the light. Steel met steel as the man's blade rose. The clash echoing across the stream. The girl cried out, but the human did not falter. Each strike of his blade fueled by something stronger than fear. He fought not for glory, not for himself, but for the child pressed against his back. More soldiers pressed in, their numbers heavy, their training sharp. The human blocked, parried, pushed them back, his body straining, his breath ragged. Yet each time he stumbled, he saw her glowing eyes watching him, her tiny voice crying, Dad, please. And he rose again, stronger, refusing to yield. The stepmother appeared behind the soldiers, her smile cruel, her eyes burning with triumph. You can't keep her, she hissed, her voice carrying across the field. She belongs to no one. She is nothing? The girl shook her head wildly, screaming, No. I'm not nothing. He said, I matter. Her voice cracked the air, piercing through the clash of blades. The human roared, his blade cutting through the soldier's guard, forcing them back. "She is not nothing," he thundered. "She is my daughter." His words carried power, shaking even the soldiers for a heartbeat. The stepmother's smile faltered, her control slipping as the girl's small voice rose again. "I am his. I am not yours." The battle raged, but the human's resolve was unbreakable. Each strike became heavier, each movement fueled by a father's fury. The soldiers, though skilled, began to falter against his will. They realized they were not fighting a mere traveler, but a man who had chosen to become a shield. At last, the commander raised a hand, halting his men. His eyes narrowed as he studied the human, the girl clinging to him. "You would defy law. Defy fear, defy us, for her," he demanded. The man stood tall, blood on his arm, sweat on his brow. "Yes, I would defy the galaxy itself for her." Silence stretched across the field. The soldiers breathing hard, the stepmother trembling with rage. The commander's gaze shifted to the girl, her glowing eyes filled with tears, but blazing with courage. He lowered his weapon slowly. "Then she is yours," he said, "and may the gods judge if you are worthy." With that, he turned, his men following, leaving the stepmother screaming as her plans crumbled. The human lowered his blade, his chest rising and falling like a storm. The girl ran into his arms, sobbing against him. "I thought they would take me. I thought I'd lose you." He held her tightly, his voice low but steady. "Never. They will never take you while I breathe." She clung to him, whispering again and again, "Dad, Dad, Dad." The stepmother vanished into the distance, her hate unbroken, her revenge not yet ended, but for now. The test had been faced, and the bond had not broken. It had grown even stronger. Sealed in fire and battle, the human and the alien girl stood together. No longer just traveler and child, but father and daughter in truth. A new home, a new family. The battle was over, but the weight of it still pressed heavy on the human's shoulders. He walked slowly with the alien girl in his arms, her small hands clinging tightly around his neck. Her tears had dried, but her glowing eyes still shimmered with fear and exhaustion. Each step he took was steady, but inside, his heart carried both relief and resolve. They found shelter in a quiet valley, far from the town and its cruel whispers. The human built a fire near the edge of a forest. Setting down his pack, the girl sat close to him, never letting go of his cloak, her small body pressed against his side. She looked at him as if she was making sure he was real, as if she was afraid he might vanish. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you didn't let them take me." The human looked at her, his eyes steady, his voice calm. "I told you. No one will ever take you." Her lips curved into a smile, weak but full of warmth. "Then, I'm really yours now." He nodded, placing a rough but gentle hand on her small head. "Yes, you are mine." The words wrapped around her like a blanket, stronger than any cloak. For the first time in her life, she felt safe enough to breathe without fear. She leaned against him, her eyes closing slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Then I'll never leave you." Never. The human stared into the fire, his chest heavy but full. He had not asked for this, had not searched for it, but he knew now it was right. Days passed, and the valley became their home. The human built a small shelter from wood and stone, strong enough to guard against storms. The girl helped, carrying sticks, tying knots, laughing when her hands got tangled in rope. She was no longer the trembling shadow who begged on the street. She was learning, growing, shining at night. They sat by the fire, and the girl told stories of her real mother. Her voice was soft, her memories broken, but she shared them with trust. The human listened, nodding, his hand always resting gently on her shoulder. When she grew sad, he reminded her. She would be proud of you. Her glowing eyes would brighten at his words, and her smile returned. The villagers' hatred no longer reached them. The stepmother's shadow still lingered in the world. But here, it could not touch her in the valley. There was only the sound of wind through the trees and the crackle of fire at night. The girl began to hum songs again, little tunes her mother once sang. The human would listen in silence, his chest heavy with a warmth he had not felt in years. One evening, as stars lit the sky, the girl sat beside him, her head resting against his arm. "Dad," she said softly, "you don't regret it, do you?" The man looked down, surprised. "Regret what?" "Taking me," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "Keeping me when you could have walked away." The human's eyes softened, his voice firm. "No, I don't regret it." He lifted her chin gently so she would meet his gaze. "The only thing I'd regret is letting you go." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not of fear. She threw her arms around him, holding tight, whispering again and again, "Thank you, Dad." "Thank you." Seasons began to change, and so did the girl. Her cheeks grew fuller, her steps steadier, her laughter brighter. She worked beside him, cooked with him, even teased him when his fire smoked too much, and every night, before she slept, she whispered the same words, "Good night, Dad," he always answered. "Good night, daughter." The bond between them had been tested by fear, by hatred, by battle, but it had not broken. It had only grown stronger. No stepmother's lies, no villager's anger, no soldier's blade could cut it now. Because it was not a bond of chance, it was a bond of choice. One morning, as they stood at the edge of the valley, the girl looked up at him, her glowing eyes full of hope. "Can we stay here forever?" she asked, her small hand slipping into his. The man looked at the horizon, the sun rising over the hills. "Yes," he said at last, his voice steady. "Here, we will build our home. Our family." The girl smiled, her face brighter than the dawn. She hugged him tightly, her voice strong. "I'll be the best daughter, you'll see. I won't misbehave." The human chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You don't have to promise that," he said. "You only have to be yourself. And that's enough." Tears filled her eyes again, but they were tears of joy. For the first time in her life, she believed she was loved, not for what she could do, but for who she was. The wind swept through the valley, carrying her laughter high into the sky, and the man knew, without doubt, that his life had changed forever. He had found a daughter, and she had found a father. Not by blood, not by law, but by something stronger, by choice, by love, by the bond they built together. And as they walked hand in hand into the rising sun, the world no longer felt empty. It felt like home.